And I do this for a couple reasons. One, because I'm telling you, people will say no because your price is too cheap, because they've been burned. They know the cheap guy. Like, we all think they're getting quotes because they want to find something cheaper. That's not true. They didn't like you. Okay. Like, they don't trust you. Something other than a price is happening, or maybe you just didn't do a good enough job communicating value. They like you, but they just want to double check, right?
Hello, welcome to Outer Spaces, a podcast dedicated to empowering landscapers, hardscapers, and outdoor living professionals. I'm Joshua Gillow. My mission through this show is to create a powerful resource for you, someone who is striving to grow their company well past the $1 million line, but might not have all the tools and processes to do so. Here in Outer Spaces, we are passionate about breaking the chains of small mindsets and helping contractors just like you take control of their businesses and their lives. With nearly 3 decades of experience designing, selling, and building six-figure outdoor living spaces, I've made all the mistakes. Starting with $0 in my pocket, and through the grace of God and a ton of hard work, I now own multiple businesses that afford me the time with my family and the lifestyle I've always dreamed of. So join me as I share what I've learned along my journey, strategies, and other contractor success stories right here on the Outer Spaces podcast. Now, let's get on with the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Outer Spaces podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow, and this week, Ryan Lee joins me for a final week. We're going to talk about how to increase your closing rate, what it takes to close more clients, more projects, and what you can do in your business right now to be more effective as a communicator in order to bring those clients from, I'm not sure I want to work with you, to heck yes, let's get rolling with this project. So if you struggle at times with your closing rate and closing clients and bringing them into the fold, keep on listening. Hey, Ryan, welcome back to the Outer Spaces podcast here today. We're going to get right into it. How to increase your closing rate. We've got 10 minutes, and now we want to get right down to it. So closing rate. The average in the industry is 30%. How do we fix that?
Oh my gosh, we only have 10 minutes. Jeez, put the pressure on. So many things. So in our previous episodes, we've talked about pricing. We talked about pre-qualifying. Like, all these things are super important. I don't know which tool to start with. So I would say this. One tool that I'll share with you would be, I like giving people options. I like giving people freedom to choose. And there's so many different ways to do this depending on what product or service you're selling. But what I've found is, if you just tell someone, like when I started, I was like, well, I'm just going to do the research. I know what they need. I'm the professional. They don't know. So I'm going to give them one option. And it worked, but it was closer to that 30%, 40% closing rate, right? And then when you start to after a while, I had people telling me, I'm like, why didn't you go with us? Like, you went with them? Like, I thought I was so much cooler. And they're like, well, they said they could do this. And I'm like, we could do that. Like, what? So maybe I'll start offering 2 options. And guess what? Like, my closing rate improved. I started offering 2 options. But then I realized, I had this like epiphany one day, that if you think about just generalize the human population, the people that's in our ideal client avatar, like, not all of them want to buy the most expensive. There are people that do. Like, they intentionally buy that. Like, they want it. They're like, how much did my neighbor spend? And they're like, okay, let's do double that. Like, that feels good to them. But majority of people don't want to buy the most expensive. The majority don't want to buy the cheapest because they've been burned. They understand that they don't want to buy the cheapest. But when I was giving them 2 options, I was giving them the most expensive and the cheapest, at least within my offering, right? And so it didn't make sense fundamentally. So I was like, well, I think I'll start offering 3 options. And this was magic for me. When I started offering 3 options, I now had an offering for everybody, because some people did want to buy the cheaper thing. Like, that's just who they were. That's who they are in life. And so I had an option for them. I had an option for the flashy people. They were like, yeah, we want double what our neighbors spent. But then I had an option for the majority of people, about the 80%, which was right in the middle. They didn't want the most expensive. They didn't want the cheapest. They wanted the thing in the middle that kind of everyone else was doing. If you see someone like getting their bathroom remodeled, there's like not a coincidence that they do like 7 in the neighborhood, because they kind of want what everyone else has, right? And so that triple option close is what I call it. That is something that really helped me, and has helped my clients really increase their closing rate.
Dude, I couldn't agree more. And just like when you go to the store, people are used to getting different options. You want to go for barbecue sauce and you go to the store and there's 25 different options, but technically there's conventional, there's organic, and then there's probably basic, right? Maybe store brand. So you have the choice. If they only had organic sitting there and somebody walked in like, screw this store, I'm going to go to another one. And it's the same thing with outdoor living and the same thing with lighting. If you don't give people options, that I love how you called that. What did you call it? The 3-option close?
Triple option. Yeah. Triple option close.
Tripping. I love it because now the clients can look and you know what, maybe their solution is somewhere in between one of those, but at least they can see both sides. That's the main thing. It's like you're getting 3 bids with one person or 3 ideas with one person, as opposed to having to go to 3 people to do that. So I love that. We even had
people say that. They would say like, yeah, well, we were getting other quotes, but you just gave them to us. It's like we were born as humans. Like God was like, okay, go down to earth. And then just know this, anytime you ever buy something, you have to get 3 quotes. Like sometime at some point that was like ingrained in us. Cause for some reason people have to get quotes. And this has happened to me. I've had like the first guy come over and I'm like, I know I'm hiring them. But when I was a baby, I was told that I had to get 3 quotes. So I'm going to get 3 quotes. It's ridiculous. But it checks that box, right? And the key here is not giving too many options. I've seen people do this huge a la carte thing. And that's like going to like the Cheesecake Factory. The menu's like 400 pages. And you're like, I don't know. Yeah. Like, just like close my eyes and pick a page. Like you don't want to overwhelm them with choices because then like they just get paralyzed in fear. But we're in America and people love freedom. So if you're telling them listen, I've done my research, this is what you need to do, that's not going to work. And maybe it worked for you in the past, but it's what got you here is not going to get you there. If you really want to scale, if you want to increase your rate, you have to give them options. And I like what you said too. Like you could give them 3 options and maybe they choose something in between the 2 and the 3. Like it doesn't have to, it's not like a package per se. Like they can still then communicate with you and say, you know what, we really like the idea of 3, but that price is killer. Like that's way more than we thought it was going to be. And then you can peel it back. Yeah. What is it about 3 that you like? Because honestly, it might be the right option for them. It might not be. You might downsell them into the middle one. And then you're even more epic and awesome to them because they're like, dude, this guy just like downsold us into the middle. He made less money by talking us into the middle one. We love him. We want to spend more money with him because he's awesome.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. And it's giving your clients options so you're not forcing them out of your guidance into somebody else's because you didn't provide other options. And if you have a budget of say $50,000 and you offer them something for 40, something for 50, and something for 60, hypothetically, they feel like, oh, cool. I could spend less. I could spend more. I could spend the middle. And most will pick middle or high end. Have you found that to be true?
All day long. Yep. And even if someone's afraid and they're like, but I think they're going to spend 50. I like to do my top option this is kind of crazy. Whatever my top option is, I like to almost double it. So literally times it by like 1.9 or 2. And I do this for a couple reasons. One, because I'm telling you, people will say no because your price is too cheap. Because they've been burned. They know the cheap guy. Like we all think they're getting quotes because they want to find something cheaper. That's not true. Like they didn't like you. Okay. Like they don't trust you. Something other than a price is happening, or maybe you just didn't do a good enough job communicating value. They like you, but they just want to double check. Right. But if you are, when you throw out that huge price, it attracts the ballers and they're like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm twice as good as my neighbors. Helps them feel good about themselves. Or the people, the majority, they're like, we're not crazy. You think we're going to spend $100,000? We're only going to spend 50. Now think about that. When people are saying only spend $50,000, like, holy freaking cow, that's such a cool thing to hear out of people's mouth. If you started at 50 and said, all right, well, we've got an option that's 50 and one that's 40. They're like, 50 grand? Like, that's a lot of money because you didn't show them crazy. You didn't show them that there's crazy people that spend 100. And so it's all about perspective, psychology, and framing to get them to say the words. Let's just do the one that's only 50.
Yeah.
Even though 50 is a lot, right?
That's what responsible people do.
Yeah. We're not nuts.
Yeah, exactly. But it's giving them the options so they don't have to go somewhere else to have other options, especially on the pricing side of things. So if you've listened well through your sales process, asked the right questions in the right order, then what'll happen is you'll be at a point where you need to start talking about numbers, right? And that's an important part of all of this, because it's normally the make or break when it comes down to this. When it comes to closing rate, it's usually lost right on budget. And most, including myself in the beginning of the people in our industry, they don't want to talk about budget because budget is a big, scary, scary topic. So they just either ignore it like I did and got no's forever because I kept, thinking like, oh, I'll just design this. It'll be so awesome. And their budget, I never knew it, but it was 50 and my design was 250. And I'm like, they got the money. Look at that house. There's no problem. They'll do this. But their expectation was 50 and I had no influence on that expectation. And then the design comes out to be 250, which gave them everything they asked for, but they would never be that irresponsible because they were never prepped or ready for that kind of expectation. So I was shooting myself in the foot because I was too cowardly to have that conversation. So when I realized, wait a minute, I got to fix that. What's the number one thing that could help me with my closing rate would be to have an honest conversation around budget. And that's why with our sales program, that's one of the main things. That was the genesis of the program, was to be able to do that. And we figured out how to do that in 3 easy steps where we get budget every time. And that either leads us on one of two paths. One path is, let's keep moving forward. We're lined up. Our expectations are in line, the homeowners and ours. Or the second is, no, there's no way we're going to bridge this chasm. They've got a $50,000 budget. My expectations for the space is 250. If that doesn't, so one of us don't move, we're not going out. It's that simple, because why waste their time and why waste ours? So setting expectations is one of the key indicators to how that's going to work for you. So what are your thoughts?
I love that
to be true as well.
Yeah, I mean, big time. I think the problem is in life, we when we try to solve problems, we think, okay, this is the problem, so I'm going to solve this. When in reality, the problem was created from a series of steps before the problem. And so it's like, that's why as business owners, we're out just putting out fires. And like putting out the fire does solve the problem right now, but it doesn't truly solve the root problem, right? So we're just chasing our tail, putting out fires. But what if we were to just like go back a few steps and solve the problem so that the fire never even happened? And that's what you're talking about, is like, if you really want to increase your closing rate, it starts well before the actual close. Like solving the problem of increasing your closing starts with pre-qualifying, starts with getting price and budget out early, starts with asking the right questions. Like, that's why when you do all these other things in advance of it, the close is really easy. It's not a close like you talked about. It's an opening of a relationship. It's the easiest thing ever. And so your closing rate is literally determined by the other things and what you've done. It starts with your marketing, your branding, all these other things well in advance of it, asking those right questions, getting price out. Worst case, if they still are like, I don't know, we got to think about it. These are still possibilities that could happen. And we talked about this a little bit on another episode. Just ask one question. What's holding you back? If you're a human caring about a human, that's an easy question to ask. What were you expecting to hear from us today that you didn't? That's not allowing you to move forward. What can we do to help you move forward with this project? That's not a hard question for me, because I care about them. I want them to make the right choice. And if you've done a good job up until then by asking questions, that's not awkward. If that's the first question you've asked them, they're like, dude, stop trying to pressure us. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah, exactly. Start with awkward in the beginning. And then it just gets more
get
awkward.
it over with. Big time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Ryan, I know we said we'd wrap it up. We're a little bit over 10 minutes here, but I appreciate your insight on this. And, when it comes to, working with customers and setting expectations, so much of that is how you increase your closing rate, by being honest and being transparent up front, knowing you're the guide, not the hero of the story here. This is all about you trying to guide your client, and maybe they are a good fit and maybe they're not. That's ultimately something you need to decide as you move through a process to define if they're going to be a great client for your company and if they are going to get the value for the solution you're looking for. So Ryan, thank you for coming on for these last 4 weeks and sharing what you do. How can people find you if they love what they heard so far?
Dude, that was awesome. I want to thank you. I want to thank the listeners for putting up with me for 4 weeks. But I have a blast doing this stuff. My podcast is Lighting for Profits. We'll have you on here soon. And then my website is Landscape Lighting Secrets. So if you go to landscapelightingsecrets.com and you're like, dude, I do want to bolt on outdoor lighting, or at least want to have a conversation around it, the best thing would be to do is listen to my podcast, because it's free info on literally how to help you start it. But if you go to my website, landscapelightingsecrets.com, click start here, you can actually watch a case study that we put together and book a call with me, and we can just hash it out and see if landscape lighting would be a good thing for you to bolt on or not.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you for all your insights and all the information you shared with us here. And listeners, reach out to him. He's a great guy. He's got a lot of good stuff going on over there. And thank you again, Ryan, for coming on.
Thank you, man. Have a good one.
Absolutely. Now, guys, for next week, we're going to jump in with Scott Lezak. We're going to have him back on the show, and we're going to talk about contractors facing and overcoming addiction. We go deep next week, and this is going to be an uncomfortable topic for somebody to listen to. But if you are or know somebody who's going through addiction, this is going to be an episode that could change your life. So, guys, see you next week.